folks. Good day and welcome back to Bear Clan's Hiking Sedona podcast. We're on episode 12 today, and I've got another interview for you. And today I've got Randy Fridley with me. And Randy, go ahead and say hi to everybody and tell them a little bit about yourself.
Hello, everybody. And first, thank you, Bear, for inviting me.
You're welcome.
About myself, I've lived here in Sedona for about 10 years and came here through a health problem. But what's important is that I got here, and Sedona made my health better. I'm convinced of that. It's a spiritual and mystical place. And the hiking that we're going to talk about had a lot to do with it. My earlier life, I had a couple of professional careers. One in the Marines, in aviation, in the A6 Intruder for 20 years, and then another approximate 20 years as a physician assistant. I went back to school between careers. But what I really like is my life here in Sedona, where I hike. I support my wife's medical practice to a degree. I do a little bit of writing and just enjoy the spirituality. This is a very fulfilling place if you have a spiritual orientation. Yeah. And again, the hiking contributes so much to that. So that's enough about me to know who I was and what I am now. I'm different than who I was.
As we all are, once we get here, things change and we kind of transform into what we are. I mean, that's just a life lesson in general, but this is quite a different place for sure. So
Agreed.
When you first got to Sedona, what was your impression? I mean, what was it that got you here? I mean, you said medical, but did you know it was Sedona was your destination? When you did come here, how did that feel to you?
Well, good question. My first introduction to Sedona was on a vacation. We were supposed to go to the Grand Canyon from Phoenix, and my wife wanted to stop by because somebody had told her about Sedona. And I like going from A to B. So I was a little ruffled about that. But as we came in on 179 and I began looking at, well, first you see Bell Rock and then you see other formations. Courthouse Butte.
Twin Buttes and everything.
Right, and my jaw hit the floor, and I even said I didn't know there was a place like this in America. I had no idea. Right. I was almost stunned with the beauty. I was. Yeah. So that was on a vacation in 97. And we began then coming back for vacations because there's hiking here. At that time, there was a book that had about 130 hikes in it. We bought it, and whenever we would come out, we'd try to do 2 or 3 or 4 of those hikes. And I just loved it. But in my life in between, I looked forward to coming back to Sedona. And people would ask me, well, where are you from? Well, I live in Panama City, Florida, but my soul lives in Sedona.
Right.
And that was my beginning. Yeah. Never had any kind of a comprehension that I'd get a chance to live here. So when that presented, I was ecstatic because now I got to live where my soul lived.
Right.
It's beautiful.
So give me maybe a comparison of the hikes that you did as a tourist compared to the hikes you're doing as a resident.
Well, the hikes I did as a tourist were probably Cathedral Rock, the Devil's Bridge.
The same top 5 that everybody sees when they come in?
Exactly. I had to see all the vortexes.
Right, Boynton Canyon.
Because
Airport Mesa.
You got it. And I was very struck by the power and beauty. I could feel those. Some people feel what's going on here very strongly, and I did. So we would do those hikes, and then as we would come back, try to get into this book a little bit more. Then when I moved here, of course, I knew I had a health challenge and I needed to extend myself to hike more often. Fantastic. What did I really want to do? Hike more often. And because of the health issue, nobody could say, oh, you're out there having fun too much. My wife had to say, this is clearly good for you, so go for it, dude.
Right.
And I did.
How many times do you think people have been told, hike or die?
Right. I don't know, but it's a great option if you love hiking, especially in Sedona.
It's like a beautiful
But that was my choice. Well, I really like the Courthouse Butte. I guess it's the big
loop.
Courthouse Butte, that big loop.
That's a nice
It's beautiful, especially on the backside where you can see rabbit ears and so on. I started picking up some of the longer hikes. I did Bear Mountain, which is one of our top hikes, I think.
Absolutely.
Wilson Mountain, north and south, both very challenging. Started doing the stuff that people would call the harder hikes.
Yeah.
And I never did see it that way. But anyway, I just started tackling the more and more options. I also wanted to do as many as I could. So I'd be checking off in this hiking book that I have. And I have it, and it's on top of my dresser at home right now. And most of the all of the hikes that are inside Red Rock country here in the Sedona area, I did. There's a few outside, some of the ones that you approach from either Cottonwood or the east side of I-17.
Like Lime Kiln or something like
right.
that?
Right. It happens that I have done Lime Kiln,
nice.
But that's a good example of one that I might not care about so much.
Right.
Because I am a Red Rock fan.
Red Rock in the blood, right?
That's where I like, that's right. That's where I like this. I've done a few on the other side of I-17, but again, there have been some events out there that were not pleasant for people. Not a lot of them, and I just started staying away from there for safety reasons,
and it's
really.
not like you have nowhere to go while you're living in Sedona.
Yeah, exactly.
Just a few hundred. I don't know if you're aware of this, but we're going to be topping almost 200 trails here pretty soon. We're over 180 now. So they're expanding quite a bit.
Yes, I noticed that when I hike. You'll come across a new intersection that wasn't there before. And I've tried to figure out how that happens. And this is what I think happens. The bicyclists start finding their way into other areas because they like to the freedom of their own trails. The Forest Service sees that new trails have been developed. They'll put up a sign naming the trail, and then it ends up on a map. That's how I think it happens.
I won't debunk that for you, but I'm going to just let you kind of keep that bubble.
Okay.
Now, here's a question. I already know the answer to this because you and I have hiked before together. So it's been a pleasure, obviously, to have you as a hiking buddy as well as just doing this podcast.
Same here.
But when you hike, do you feel safe in Sedona? Do you feel like you're hiking safely all the time, or have you been in moments?
I have always been safe, as it turns out. There has never been anything particularly scary in, I don't know how many hikes, hiking 5 or 6 times a week for 10 years. It's a lot of hikes. There have been twice that I have found a kill of mountain lions. And they've been way out, like way out on the Schnebly Trail and in a low, dry creek area of the Gardner Trail. Years apart. And I wondered about that, but there's no history of mountain lion attacks here that I'm aware of.
Not on humans.
And
They'll go after the little puppies and the cats and stuff like that, the simple food.
Exactly. So just knowing that, and I will tell you, there was a time early in hiking that when I'd go on those hikes, because of that experience, I carried a sidearm when I hiked alone. Also, before cell phone service got so good that you could be in touch with anybody from just about anywhere. But do I feel safe? Yes, I've never had any kind of event to not feel as safe, or have I heard that from anyone else who I've hiked with, and I talk with hikers as much as I can. So yes, sir, I do feel safe.
I always bring, because of the kind of hiker I am, I'm a little nuts, but I always bring a nice blade with me. That's military grade, and I'm a pretty big target, so I don't believe I'll ever be approached by any animal. But I'm always making sure I'm prepared and ready. There's no reason to be without. It's that one time that all it'll take.
Well, that's a good point, and I think you have to answer to your own comfort level and your own. But I think any animal that would tackle you would be nutty, and they're not nutty. They want to be alive too.
Right. They're doing it either for protection or they're starving. What would be? And I've posed this question to myself on a podcast. Is what's my favorite hike? Do you have one favorite hike? I know you're very much like me, but go ahead and try and give that an answer.
Well, it is a tough question because I should say that my favorite hike is the one I'm on right now. That's what always happens. I'll get on a trail and I'll say, I think I actually like this better than the one I thought was my favorite. But if you pinned me down, there's a couple, but the number one would be to start at the Jordan Trailhead, go up Brins Mesa, about halfway, connect with Soldiers Pass, come down the Soldiers Pass draw there, and you come by the 7 Sacred Pools, you come by the Devil's Kitchen. There are spectacular views. I think it's a vortex where you start down from Soldiers Pass. When you tip over the edge and start coming down, I just get that feel. Anyway, down there at the bottom, past the Devil's Kitchen, you hook up with Jordan again. Then you can either depending on how you're feeling.
Right.
Come back the short way and come up Cibola,
Cibola
Pass,
Pass.
or finish it with the Jordan Trail.
You want a little more aggression in the end of your hike, go up Cibola Pass. Jordan's a little more casual, yeah.
Right, it's a little longer.
Yeah.
And it depends on who you're hiking with,
Absolutely.
too, what they feel like. I often hike alone, though, and just for me, I would say that would be my favorite.
Right.
I do like Bear Mountain. There's not a bad view. You can stop at any time on Bear Mountain, turn around and say, holy smoke, is this beautiful or
Absolutely.
what?
Absolutely.
And of course, what I mentioned earlier, the ballpark trail and
big park.
and the big park, and the Courthouse Butte Loop.
Yeah.
I
Gorgeous,
like that.
gorgeous.
Not difficult. I think maybe going up the mesa at Brins Mesa is a little challenging. You'll huff and puff. But
Yeah, the
part
rock
of that is what I
conditions,
want.
Right? That's why you're doing it as well.
That's right.
It's kind of a double bonus for you when you're doing anything here. I mean, that's the truth.
It is
That's
the truth. Yeah, couldn't
Now,
agree with you more.
now, what do you think the conditions of the trail? So you and I I think we might have come around Sedona about the same time, roughly. I recall the trails being a certain way when I first came here as a tourist. And what do you think the trail system is like today? I mean, you mentioned about the mountain bikers making their own trails and stuff like that. How do you feel that the trails are kept, are labeled, or whatever, compared to when you first got here?
I think there's a huge improvement, to tell you the truth, because there's a lot more signage. There was an opportunity to get lost often before they began doing better signage on the trails. 10 years ago when I started, you could wander off and get yourself into a place where you didn't know where the heck you were. They've put up a lot of signs. They're good, sturdy signs. The mapping is better. I think this contributes significantly to the safety and to your comfort as you're hiking along and you say, yep, this is definitely where I am.
Definitely the trail.
And where I want to turn or where I want to hook up with the other trail. So I've seen a big improvement. There are more trails. I see trail maintenance. Sometimes when I'm out hiking, it's the Forest Service, or it might be one Forest Service person directing some volunteers. So I think the powers that be here might know the trails bring a lot of people, and they've done a better job at marking them and keeping them safe. I'm not sure what instigated that, but to answer your question, it's quite a bit better than when I started.
Yeah, it's the same thing for me. When I first got here, I noticed that there were too many times where you could go left or right and not really fully know that you're on the trail.
That's
right.
Right.
I actually, in my first year after coming here for probably half a dozen times in my first year as a tourist, I started building a website with the trail definitions and making sure it's clearly defined. Because I noticed, like you, it's a little off here, a little off there. But now there's almost no need for it because at every trailhead there's beautiful kiosks giving you the maps of the trails that you're near, plus the trails that you're not near, but you can get to next. It's been done really well.
I think it has too, Bear. And I guess you could, with the network here, you could continuously hike and hit most of the trails. At some point, they're going to weave across each other.
I actually did, almost 10 years ago, something like that. I did a podcast. I call it my claim to fame hike. I did a 7-day, 77-mile hike from Bear to Bell.
I think you told me about that once.
Yeah. So you can actually, by trail jumping, trail hopping, or whatever you want to call it, you can actually get the entirety of Sedona's vista.
If you had the energy and food and water, you could. There is one thing people ought to know, because this is still true. If you are hiking along and there's a question mark about do I go right or left, the way that the Forest Service has told you don't go right, they'll just lay a log across that trail.
Right.
And that means don't go there. Now, how would you normally interpret that as somebody who had just come here? I don't know that you, just step over the log and keep going. Well, that log means go the other way.
Right, directional stuff. Absolutely, absolutely. Now, you've introduced family and friends to Sedona. I know that for a fact because I watch you on Facebook and you introduce a lot. So who was like the first person that you said, oh my God, you've got to come here?
That was probably my younger brother, Mick. And he did. And he's come out 3 times and hiked. He's from the Boston area.
Yeah.
And I noticed on Facebook, I'll put usually 1 photo, maybe 2, or a photo and a video, and say where I was. People are so struck by the beauty of it all over the world. I'm sort of, I don't want to ever say I take it for granted, but you'll just get so many comments. Oh, I got to come there. I got to see you. And I'll say, okay, well, we have a spare bedroom. Or I'll say, there's a lot of motels here.
Motels,
Somebody
hotels.
I want to encourage, but
Yeah.
But we're busy. So anyway, it's kind of worked that way. Just more and more people who are friends who have said, oh, I got to see that. A guy who I went to high school with and then flight school and flew with in the Marines comes back every year. He and his wife come back every year and hike. So it has really brought people back into my life who used to be there, who are nature lovers. They're still fit and have a fitness program in their life, and they enjoy the beauty of Sedona, which would be almost anybody, I would think.
You would think, right?
Yeah.
You would think. It's almost impossible to see somebody leaving going, yeah, I don't know about
It
Sedona.
wasn't that great. Yeah, you're not going to hear that.
Doesn't happen. So I'll ask you this last question. If you saw somebody anywhere in your travels, not in Sedona, but somewhere in your travels, let's say you were in Texas for some reason, what would you tell them about Sedona? What would be kind of like the fish hook? Psst, cast it out there and try to catch them in.
To get them here, to bring them here, I think I would have to focus on the beauty. I would just tell them, I think it might be one of the most beautiful places on the whole planet. I haven't traveled the whole planet, but I have gotten around pretty well. Because everybody doesn't hike.
Right.
And then I would tell them, there are just places to go get out of your car and sit and look at the beauty. There are a lot of powerful vortexes here, both male, mostly male vortexes here, but female also. Inspirational places. If you're getting ready to make a life change, you're going to write a book, you want to start a family, you want
change
inspirational,
job, like
something to fill your spirit with the help to boost you to go in the right direction, come visit Sedona.
Yeah.
You'll get that flood of good vibes and you'll be able to do the right thing. I think I would just tell them, come here and experience the beauty. And then if you like to hike, or even if you're mediocre about that, go hiking. You'll start liking hiking.
Yes.
Or
nice
mountain biking.
Right.
And we do see equestrian horseback riding on the
we
trails
do.
occasionally.
That's unfortunately that's decreased over the time that I've been here.
I think
because
you're
I
right.
remember early on I would see a lot more than I do today, and I think that's because tourists don't want to step in horse poop.
Well,
I'm pretty sure that has something to do with it.
That's certainly understandable. But from the perspective of the people that bring their horses here and ride, I think you're right. It is down. I'll see them on the Jim Thompson Trail.
Jim Thompson.
Sometimes that's one that they like.
I see them a lot on Jack's Canyon.
Is that right?
Yeah, they also have they got the free range cattle out there too through Jack's Canyon.
Right. Yeah, that's
so
right.
the herders usually come cruising through there. But I know some of the horseback riders that are out there. I mean, every time I see them, I'm going to talk.
Sure.
Like, hey guys, who are you and where are you from, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's you.
Yeah, it's all about the gift for gab, I guess.
Yes, you've got it.
So, Randy, do you have anything else you want to say to the public? Anything at all?
I would say just come and enjoy it, and I have noticed that the people who come and visit have done a good job of keeping the trails clean. I mean, I've lived in beach communities all my life, and you'll find beer cans and trash and plastic bags and so on. You don't see much of that. So the old adage about leave only footprints and take away memories.
Pack it in, pack it out.
Do that and keep it beautiful for everyone, and that way when you come, you're going to see a place that's still pretty pristine. For as many visitors and hikers as we get, it's amazingly pristine and clean out there. So please do that and enjoy it. And by all means, come out and hike. Give hiking a chance, because it's good for you. My own perspective is that the key to the longest life you might get and the best life you might get is cardiopulmonary health.
Right.
And it's the basis, although you could say, my grandmother's 100 years old and never took a running step. Yes, there are people with great genes, but by and large, cardiopulmonary health is going to get you the best life and the longest. And here, it's just so beautiful. You'll come back more and more, and maybe you'll end up like Bear and I don't know.
Local
we like
residents.
it so much. We've dug in.
It's home, man. It was home the first moment I saw it, and it's been home since, and it's going to remain that.
Yeah, agreed.
Well, awesome, Randy. Thank you so very much for being a part of this podcast. I greatly appreciate it beyond words. You are a true gentleman and a wonderful being, and I can't express to you how perfect this was for me to be able to interview.
Well, you're very kind, and I see you in the same light. So to be invited to do something like this by you is very much a thrill. I respect you to the moon and back. Thank you, and we got to hike together before too long.
Absolutely. I got opportunities coming up.
Good.
All right, folks, thank you very much. thanks a lot for taking the time to listen to another one of my interviews. I've got more in store coming up soon, but we're also going to be talking a little bit more about trails specifically. I know a lot of people are saying, well, why don't you talk about trails? I talk a lot about the details, and my most important thing to talk to you about all the time is safety, just like Randy was mentioning. Safety is the priority, so if you guys decide that you're going to be going on a trail that's 6 miles, don't forget you can turn around at 2. You don't have to go to the end of any trail just for the sake of going to the end of it. Because at no point in time when you're hiking a trail in Sedona are you going to be lacking in the gorgeous views.
And have water.
Have lots of water, absolutely. Thank you very much, folks. God bless you, and we will see you next time.